everyone. Welcome to Dreadnought Mondays. Appreciate you taking the time to jump on. Thank you for being here. Today we are joined by Cruise Director Kabir. Many of you may know him from his podcast, Keeping Afloat, or he's been on many cruise ships that you might have seen him on, whatnot. Kabir, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. If you wouldn't mind, just for those that don't know you, may not be as familiar with you, give a little introduction about yourself and what you're up to.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Kenny. My name's Kabir. I'm a cruise director. I sail around the world on cruise ships. And to be honest with you, I think I have one of the best jobs in the world. But basically, back in the day when I was 6 years old, I started cruising on ships, ended up loving it so much that when I turned about 20 or so, we ended up just sticking with it. And I decided to work on a cruise ship. So I became a cruise director a few years ago. I've worked for Celebrity. I've worked for Carnival. I've worked for a few other really big lines as well. So yeah, it's just been a great journey so far.
That's awesome. And your first cruise at 6. That's cool.
You know what ship it was on? Actually, it was on, I don't know how long. Kenny, how long have you been cruising?
My first cruise was 2016, so not very long ago.
2006. Okay. So back in the day, like the early days of Royal Caribbean, they had a series of ships that they came out with, and they were all, oops, there we go. That's actually funny enough, my cruise account right now, because I just posted a picture of the ship I'm talking about. But the ship was called the Sunbird. But before that, it was Song of America for Royal Caribbean. It was one of their first, newest, biggest ships. So it was a Royal Caribbean ship originally. And I just love that ship. And ironically now, looking where Royal Caribbean's gone to, I'm just so utterly impressed. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Our first ship was Jewel of the Seas.
Oh, you know what? That class of ship is absolutely fantastic. Like I've never been so amazed at how innovative a cruise line can be more than Royal Caribbean.
Yeah, it was a fun ship. I'm always watching the itineraries and like, okay, when am I going on it next?
Exactly. But yeah, so, Jewel of the Seas, where did you go? How long was it?
It was a 4-day. We went out of Florida. We went to Nassau and I just forgot the name of the private island.
Coco Cay.
Coco Cay, thank you. So yeah, Nassau, Coco Cay, and then back to Florida. So it was only like a 4-day cruise. So.
Nice. That's awesome, though.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Beautiful ships, though.
Oh, yeah. Very, very beautiful. And staff was phenomenal. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's jump right in a little bit. You being a cruise director and stuff, and obviously impacted by all the changes that have happened this last year, if you wouldn't mind, tell us, how that has impacted you, how you're able to keep going. If you're going back to cruising, or are they keeping you in touch? Are they keeping you in touch, the cruise lines? What are you doing to move forward to? Because I know a lot of people in the cruise industry, it seems like that one's been the most hit hard. And I know a lot of people in the cruise industry have been laid off or furloughed or, whatever. So, what are some of the things that you've found that people are doing to, stay positive, keep work, keep putting food on the table, adapting to the change that has hit everyone?
So, okay, I'm going to go back to your first question in terms of, what's going on with the industry and where am I at in terms of knowing information. So basically, I left the ship back in April. It was actually late April. So I was on the ship for 6 weeks while all this stuff broke. And I try to address this in every interview that I do. The situation on the ships, the media absolutely loved to make it sound as though the crew was held hostage in some way. That was not true, at least on our ship for sure. Other people that I spoke to, that was not the case. There were a lot of restrictions put in place, yes, but the situation on the ship was not nearly as dire as the media made it sound. So that's one big point that I wanted to drive home. The crew that were on board were really responsive. Everybody was really helpful, right down from captains and hotel directors to galley stewards, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, housekeeping staff, making sure that everybody's doing well. Because at the end of the day, when all of this stuff broke, there are essential services on the ship that need to run in order to maintain everybody's comfort. And then there are other services on the ship that are there for enjoyment. So for example, entertainment, enjoyment, big part of the cruise experience, but not necessarily pivotal in keeping the ship running, such as, housekeeping, food and beverage, the engineering team, the bridge team. So everybody really snapped together and jumped in. It put a lot of things in question. Obviously, we know now the CDC has just lifted their no sail order, which is fantastic news. But my personal opinion, we are not in a position to get back to traveling in the masses just yet, because we're seeing the number of cases come out per day, and regardless of whatever the perception of the severity of the disease may be, the point is that if we're transporting this virus around places, is not going to be helpful. So overall state of the industry is good, because we can see a pillar of hope coming up now. We're hearing Bill Gates talk about vaccines that could be coming out next year, and that's when we'll see a big resumption in the cruise industry. And I know that certain cruise lines are flying crew out in order to get ships ready, because there's going to be a long quarantine period for those crew members. So great news overall. Hopefully the stock prices reflect that. And the cruise lines are going to be coming back as a well-oiled machine, getting rid of their old tonnage and replacing, updating. Royal Caribbean's taking, what's their newest ship coming out now that we've got? What, Wonder of the Seas is coming, and then who else? Odyssey? No, Odyssey's already.
Right.
Yeah, but the point is, all these new ships are joining us. Older ships are leaving, so great cleanse for the industry. I personally have no information as to where I'm going, when I'm going, if I'm going. I don't have any of that information yet. But as soon as I do, I'm going to post it on my Instagram and my Facebook, 100%.
Awesome. Yeah, it's no surprise, but unfortunate, as media always is, that they skew the truth, or they add their little flair to it, or, and then you have this media outlet talking something completely different than this media outlet. And, so like, which one is it? Where are we at?
You know what? This is it. Like, I'm a journalist by trade in terms of what I've studied. I went to school for journalism and TV production. So, finding unbiased news sources is kind of my specialty. I like to make sure that I cover all my bases. But I would just advise anyone that has questions, concerns, not just about traveling, but about the virus itself, make sure you're getting information from multiple sources. Don't just trust one. And sometimes it helps to get sources not just from one place, but from other countries as well, because their global reporting is going to be different. For example, Al Jazeera and BBC and CNN, those would be three good news sources to compare and contrast information from, because then you'd be able to find out what is the bias and what is the fact. And you'll be able to see that very clearly.
Yeah. And I've heard many things that it's different from country to country. The stats are different, the policies are different that they're doing. So it makes sense.
The more information that people get, the better. Because look, I want to get on the ship just as much as everybody else does, but I want to make sure that we do it in the most informed, safest way possible, so that it doesn't hurt us going forward. Because if we jump into this too quickly, it's going to end up shutting down all over again, and we're going to go back to square one. So if we're going to do it, we better do it right.
Absolutely. Now, when you first left the ship and stuff, I'm sure it wasn't the best day of your life. You were probably bummed and whatnot. What were your first thoughts? What did you do to, okay, here I am now, what do I do next? And keep yourself moving forward.
So that's a really funny question, because it's a little loaded. Like, when I left the ship, originally I was on my ship that I was working upon. I had actually given the reins of cruise director over to who would be my replacement. So he had arrived second week of March. I was supposed to fly home the day that he arrived. However, due to the way things were unfolding, we didn't know if he was actually going to be able to get off of the plane in our home port. So they kept me on board for an extra week. Within that week, that was when everything kind of, went tits up. So as a result, I stayed on the ship with him. Now, my ship was supposed to dock in Southampton. We were all going to get off together. Long story short, one of our company's sister vessels had an issue with water. So they had to transfer people of certain nationalities who had flights that were already booked onto the ship that was low on water, because it was going to take our slot to disembark people. as a result, I had to go to a much older ship for a couple of days, and I was fine before that. On my ship, I was just golden. I could have stayed there for an extra couple of months. It was that beautiful. That was that nice. I enjoyed every element of it. As soon as I went to that other ship, I was only supposed to be there for less than 48 hours. I just wanted to get the heck off of there. It was just not anything like my last ship. My last ship was far more modern than this thing, and I kind of just was on there, and I was like, okay, we're ready to go home. I flew home, and yeah, the question did come up. Okay, what's next? The number one thing was I wanted to dive right into the podcast and get the story out of what had been happening. That was number one. Number two was this dance class that you were talking about, the signature Bollywood dance class that I do on the pool deck. It's a mix of hip hop and Bollywood. I wanted to keep that alive because, first of all, I love it. I love working out. I love dancing. And I just thought, you know what? If other people want to tune in, they're more than welcome to it. Well, then my best friend and my neighbor, she actually said to me, she was like, hey, why don't we just do this for the neighborhood on the driveway? And it's outside. People can be distanced. There's no pressure. We should do it. And so that is how the signature dance class at home was born. So you can see that on my Instagram page. And that has now led to it being too cold outside. In Toronto right now, it is -2 degrees Celsius, which is under 32 degrees Fahrenheit for you guys, probably about 20, 26, 27. So lovely. But we've moved the dance class online to a service called Dance Class Plus, where I'll be teaching classes for now every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And basically, if you become a member of the site, it's $15 a month, and you get a 7-day free trial. And going forward, I want to expand on it. These are all things that are keeping me busy and just keeping me sane, and I'm just really enjoying. But we're also going to be doing some bodyweight workouts and more dance classes on there as well. So just so people know that, you know, your mental health is 100,000% as important as your physical health. And I think Dance Class Plus, a service like that, really helps kind of mix those two things together.
I like that. You kind of get the 2 for 1 because, you know, it occupies your time, so you're not as focused on, you know, the change of events or the negative and stuff. And plus, you're doing something that you enjoy.
100%. Yeah, you're doing something that you enjoy. And the other thing is you just know that other people are having a good, like, how could you not have a good time? You know what I mean? If you're going out of your way to subscribe or to watch videos about dancing or to join in and participate, chances are it's something you really, really enjoy.
Thank you. So what was it like the first time you did it on a cruise ship, being in front of those people? You know, what was your experience with doing that for you?
My first time I did the dance class was aboard Celebrity Reflection. It was terrifying because it happened very, very quickly. Basically, I'd been going through a lot. I'd been transferred from another ship, and my manager on that particular ship that I was on was very perceptive to that. And she kind of said, you know, what would make you feel better? And I said, I would just love to dance. I'd love to do a dance class. And I've been thinking about this idea, and I think I have the concept ready to go. She said, okay, well, I'm teaching a dance class today at 3:00. So would you like to do that? So there we were. As we departed from Mykonos, Greece, I did the very first iteration of what would become the signature dance class. And it was nerve-wracking because I didn't know all the moves at all, like maybe half of them. So what it did, though, was reinforce the fact that people just want to have a good time. And I was a decent enough dancer at that time where I could figure out kind of how to fill the steps in. So I did just that, and that's how the concept of the class was born. So things are choreographed. There's a basic plan, but I go with what people want to do. So if it's too hot, I can reduce the movement. If it's too cold, I can increase it. I can change the warm-ups and the cool-downs based off of how many people I have, how much space I have, and that's what makes Dance Class Plus unique, is you'll get the basic choreography, but to an extent, it's just like talking or singing live. You just don't know what's going to happen, and there are going to be some elements that may change, but that's just life.
I like that. I like how you committed and stuff, and then it was just, okay, here you go. You're like, oh,
yeah,
I guess.
No, exactly. And it was a great time. And then, you know what, that went on to my next ship where I eventually became cruise director. that just became the signature class. And when I moved over to P&O Australia, I changed it so that the class was every single C day at 12 o'clock noon. And we used to just build a big following every cruise. And it was a really, really nice thing to just be with people that wanted to experience joy.
Awesome. And how was that different, from doing it virtual? Because I know there's some different aspects of doing it live in person versus doing it in front of a camera, or even doing it on your driveway.
So doing it with a physical audience present helps with me accurately assessing feedback. So for example, I like knowing and seeing how people are handling the moves. If what I'm doing is too easy, too difficult, all of that element of the class is far easier to do when I have a live audience. However, if I don't have a live audience, if I have a virtual audience, things are just a little bit more choreographed. So that's really the only difference. And frankly, being outside is nicer than doing it inside. So even when I teach Dance Class Plus, I do plan to do things outside. Unfortunately, last Thursday, we couldn't get it up and running because I had everything set up outside and it started to rain and all my equipment got wet. So we kind of had to very quietly bow out of that class. Just there was a technical issue. So yeah, we refunded the 1 week, but we're only 2 weeks into operation with Dance Class Plus. So we've worked out the kinks now, people. If you're listening, please subscribe.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll definitely put all those links and information on the comments with this video.
Mm-hmm.
So that way they can go directly there and check it out. Being in front of the camera, at least for me, is quite a bit different than being in front of people live and stuff. Like even in being in front of the camera today, I'm like, there's a camera there.
Yeah, it's scary.
And like so. Actually, let's just move on to your podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast that you do.
So Keeping Afloat is as much of an unbiased story as it can be, where I go through the motions and the story elements of becoming cruise director, and it follows my career. So it starts literally from day one when I was boarding my first ship, and it goes through all the heartbreak, all of the relationships, all of the workplace struggles, the drama, things that happen to the ship. It follows as much of it as I can tell. And, I try and be as candid as I can. And now I will say season 2 is going to be far more candid than season 1 was. And the reason for that is just, I wanted to take that leap. So, we're on season 2. We're at the season where by the end of it, something really big happens to my career. I'll give you a clue. It involves my current job position. And we're getting there. So the show itself is available everywhere you can listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple. But the nice thing about it is, look, I produce every element of it. I sit here every single week and I write out the episode line by line. And it's my story. And people always ask me, Kabir, how do you remember all this stuff? My secret trick is that throughout my entire career, I've taken pictures on my iPhone and I import them all onto my computer. So I have like 40,000 pictures from my time away. And so I can reference dates, times, events of significant things because they're all there.
I love it. What keeps you going? Because I'm sure there are days where you thought, I don't even know if anyone's listening to this. I don't feel like recording this. I don't want to do the work to write it down. I have to look at this picture and figure out what the dates were. Bag it. How do you keep from going, and how do you keep the energy of the podcast?
You know what? I don't often feel like that about Keeping Afloat because, funny enough, I have a really, really nice little following with the podcast, and I feel like the people that listen are very, very active. So I'll very frequently get feedback about the show. I'll get questions and comments, and I really appreciate every element of that because through my dance class and through the podcast, I feel like I can still keep an element of me that feels like a cruise director still, despite not having a ship. My house is currently my ship. You can see my shrine to ships actually just over, because we're recording this over Zoom. Kenny can see my pictures of my ships that I have above my bed. But yes, it's frustrating. It's a lot of work at times. And look, it does come up, it does pass through my head, this is a lot of effort. But then I also just remember how nice it is just for me to have a physical documentation of my story and be able to share the lessons that I've learned with other people. When I started on ships, I was just blown away at what a steep learning curve there was in terms of just getting to terms of being away, working that hard, rules and regulations. And in many ways, the show encompasses all of the advice I wish I could give to someone starting on ships, but also as a passenger, it answers so many of the questions that I wanted to ask before I worked on a ship. What is dating like? What are relationships like? What happens when the ship can't make it into port? How often does that happen? Do people fall overboard? Is there ever a fire? All of these things that I had questions about, I talk about in my show. And I hope that for any of the other people that have questions about ships, that my show addresses all of that and answers that craving for information.
Yeah, it's one of those I wish I could have told myself 10 years ago.
Yeah, learning about all that stuff is pretty cool.
And it sounds like also with that, if you take away all the listeners, you take away all the positive feedback, you take away all the questions, I would venture to say that you still find a sense of purpose, a sense of accomplishment looking back on having done that, even if no one knew about it at all. Mm-hmm. Just for yourself and your self-confidence, self-esteem and whatnot, you have that sense of accomplishment coming from it, just from doing the work and, getting past that roadblock that's in your mind.
100%. You're right. I enjoy every element of the show, to be fair. The hardest part of it is the writing, because that's what's carrying the show, right? So every word I say has to be there for a reason. And not only that, I went over, the branding, the making of the logo, the website, what everything was supposed to look like, the background music. Some of it was provided through Anchor. Some of it I composed. Some of it was stuff I found online. All of those elements come together to make the show. And that's what I like about it. It's very unique. And I had a hand in every single element of making it sound and feel that way, and for it to be branded in the way that it is. So I feel like I'm kind of, as much as the podcast is about my life, I feel like I'm living my life through the podcast, because certain things do get changed as the episodes come out. And so maybe the situation in real life wasn't quite as ideal as the show made it out to be. But, sometimes that does happen. You embellish slightly. And I do say that in the disclaimer, certain storylines do get modified, but it's kind of nice. Sometimes I'll listen back to it, especially right before the episodes go out. I usually go for a run, pop my headphones in, and it's just nice.
That's awesome. What's the writing process like for you? Do you have like a specific day and time that you sit down and just do some writing, or just like, I want to put that on next week's show?
So there's a grid that I have that goes over major key points that I need to achieve in every episode in order to drive the story forward. So at the end of an episode, usually I'll tease what the core of the next episode's about. For example, in season 2, episode 1, I talk about having to deal with a cruise director and a hotel director that were just making my life absolute hell on this new ship that I was on. Obviously episode 2, I'm going to be confronting them. So that's a major key point. So every episode has key points that need to be hit. And then what I'll do is I'll expand on those points. I'll see how they go. And if I feel that they're not carrying the story effectively, they either get moved or we modify things so that they help move the story forward. And the writing process, it's an active writing process. So as soon as one episode is shipped and released, the next episode's writing starts. But I don't start writing the next episode until the previous episode has been released. And the reasoning for that is I like to see how the episode's going to perform and what people respond to. Because I might be thinking one thing, but the audience is craving something completely different. But I like that it's adaptive in that way.
I like that. So it's, what's the word I'm looking for here?
It's interpretive.
Interpretive, it's live, it's, it's fluid, whatever.
Fluid, yeah, exactly. Good word there. That's exactly how I feel about it. And the other really nice thing about it is I've got a system finally after 27 episodes um, where I know how I can record and plug everything into the system so that it uploads perfectly.
Awesome. Um, have you ever, I'm sure you have, gone back and listened to the very first episode
Mhm.
and, not necessarily critique, but to put a word on it, critiqued it, and how has that influenced moving forward now that you're starting into season 2 and whatnot, or even with the past few episodes?
Yeah, I have actually. To be honest with you, when I created the show, like a lot of these elements, I'd spoken to a few friends that had podcasts. So a lot of these elements I had uh, kind of worked out what the core of the organization element would be, how things would be moving forward, how things would be developed. Episode 1 of season 1 was very short. It was like 10 minutes. um, so, I mean, only critique. And then you can see they progressively get longer and then they end up hitting between 30 and 45 minutes. Season 2, episode 1 ended up being just over an hour because I had Sherry from Cruise Tips TV on the show. So that kind of dragged it out a little bit, but it was well worth it because Sherry was just an absolutely brilliant guest to have on the show. And she loves the podcast, which is lovely. But yeah, so
I agree, and shout out to Sherry.
yeah, shout out to Sherry. Hey. So the show itself, yeah, I mean, it's definitely become a lot more organized and succinct, but the core of the show is very, very much the same. Going between season 1 and season 2, you can tell there's been an advancement, but relatively speaking, maybe the difference is 10 to 15%. But the story changes, the cruise line changes in season 2. The challenges change because I'm going off of lessons learned, and it raises new points.
So I love that. So you're able to use that and grow and,
Yeah.
grow the show, grow yourself, grow your audience, the whole thing. That's awesome.
Exactly. Mhm.
Couple more questions. What would you say to someone who's thinking like of starting a podcast, or also maybe starting a, a live class, live in person or live online, like your Bollywood. It may not be Bollywood, but whatever that class for whatever it is. But they're not sure, they're hanging on the fence, or
Yeah,
what
that's a
am I
really
going to say? Or there's a camera or a microphone.
yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, look, I mean, I'm not the biggest. I don't have the biggest podcast. I don't have the biggest dance classes and things like that. So, in many ways, I don't feel qualified to speak to it. But if I were to think of advice that would be valuable to someone starting a podcast or wanting to teach classes online, first and foremost, if we're talking about the classes, there are a ton of fitness formats out there that will help advance your business. If you're interested in Bollywood, Bolly X is a fantastic Bollywood dance class. If you want choreographed, absolutely brilliant dances, go to bollyx.com and sign up with them. And there's actually an instructor portal where you can sign up to be an instructor. If you latch on to something like that, that's brilliant. The only reason I didn't was because my dance class came out well before BollyX was a thing. And so my class follows a different structure than them, but they're really good partners and friends of mine, and I absolutely love them. And I do teach some BollyX songs when I teach my class. And obviously I make sure that I shout them out and that they're informed and, that this is not my choreography, it's from this great company. So if you're starting an online class, 100% go that way. But if you're looking at starting a podcast, I think the number one thing that I would tell people is have a very concrete idea, listen to other podcasts that are within that field and find out what works and what doesn't work, and go through the comments and the forums, go through Reddit. There are lots of great resources on Reddit for beginning a podcast like that. And the final thing I would say is make sure that your branding is 100% succinct. Make sure the music and the themes and the volume levels are all succinct, because that's a really, really big element of making sure that your show is going to be successful.
Awesome. And I want to add a couple things to that Bollywood X. Even if you're not doing Bollywood specifically, I would think you would get a lot of great information on how to teach and teaching styles and tactics and things like that you can then carry over to whatever class you're teaching.
Mhm.
With the podcast, you get some basic concepts and understanding, and like you said, on the branding, and make sure it's you when you're not trying to be someone else on screen or on your podcast than you are in real life. You want to make sure you're being you. And
Be authentic. 100%. Be authentic, and your audiences are very smart, because you know what? Audiences are a reflection of who you are. So when you're inauthentic, just like if you're sitting across from someone, they can tell that you're not being yourself or that you're hiding something. So be transparent with an audience. Don't lie to people, and that doesn't just go for podcasting or teaching a class. That goes for being in front of a live audience as well. That goes for just as you are as a human. It's really important to be authentic, because it drives you a lot further than not.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, you're not trying to um, create a story on the spot, or
Yeah,
a story on the spot, or whatever. You don't. You're just free to be yourself, and that makes it feel a lot more open to express yourself. And
exactly. And if you're launching a show, or you're talking about something that maybe isn't as authentic as it could be, or that it just doesn't fit the storyline, make sure you're open and honest about it. That's why at the beginning of every single Keeping Afloat episode, I say this podcast does not reflect the views of any companies I'm associated with. They're mine and just my own. And also, certain content in this podcast may have been modified. Certain storylines may have been modified. Character names have been changed. And that's for security, privacy, and not only that, it just informs everyone that, hey, this is a show at the end of the day. It's for entertainment. It's as real as it can be. It is 95% completely authentic, but there are some embellishments that I have to make. And that's just like absolutely anything.
absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. And final question before we close out here: where can people find you? We kind of talked about the website a little bit. If you'll go over those again, and then of course we'll drop the links on as well. And if you wanted to learn more about your podcast, about cruise direct life, about Bollywood.
Mm-hmm. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is through Instagram. My username is at Cruise Director Kabir. And very simply, if you'd like to go to my website, you can go to www.cruisedirectorkabir.com. You're going to find not only the podcast, but you're also going to find Dance Class Plus and the Cruise Director Kabir store on there. So if you enjoy the podcast, you enjoy the show, I really ask that at some point, just one time in your life, please buy something from the store, because it helps sustain the show. It does. You know what? At the end of the day, look, it's a business, and I am at home, so please go ahead and get something. There's some cool merch on there that I handmade myself, including stuff that has the Keeping Afloat logo on it. And also, if you'd like to sign up for Dance Class Plus, that's available on cruisedirectorkabir.com/Dance Class Plus, and then you'll see the link right in the top there where you can sign up.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Kabir, for being here. It's been a great conversation, and we're looking forward to more episodes and more updates as things change with the COVID and cruise lines and the whole cruise industry. So, awesome. And thank you for being here. And
thank you for having me.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm glad you were able to be on here. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time to listen or watch, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. And please feel free to let us know how we can help you dread no Mondays.